Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices, and you can sign up for product alerts. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, we're going back hundreds of years back to the Salem witch trials. I actually grew up about 15 minutes from Salem, spent a lot of time there learning the history. This is a social deduction game that also has a card drafting mechanism as the main mechanism of the game. Now this is the second edition of this game. I loved the first edition, it got a saxophone serenade, but they've tightened some things up, they've added some things, and they've actually changed things for the better, I believe. So let me show you how this edition works, and I'll see you on the other side. In this social deduction game, you're either going to be a Puritan, the good side, or a witch, the bad side. Even the witches won't know who the other witches are. No one will know who anybody is at the beginning of the game. There's actually more roll cards dealt out than there are players, so you're never exactly sure how many witches there are, and even in 3 and 4 player games, it's possible that there's no witches. Over the course of the game, players are going to be drafting cards, and they're going to be playing them in front of them and trying to build sets like this, that 3 cards will build a complete set of a type of card. And it has this one big picturesque image when you put all 3 together, which looks really cool. The total amount of despair, if it matches that number, like 10 in a 5-player game, only the witches are available to win. However, if there's less than 10, then only the Puritans would be available to the win. But even with that being said, only one player can win the game. For example, in a 5-player game, if there wasn't at least 10 despair cubes at the end of the game, the Puritans are available for the win. Each Puritan will look at the icons on their card, these are all secret throughout the game, and they'd see how many of those icons there are, they'd get a point for each of those, and they'd get 2 points for having a complete set of these 3 cards that match together. Whoever has the most points is the winner, that's what you're trying to do. Each round goes through different phases. First, you'll be getting a certain amount of cards depending on the round, and you'll select one and play it. For example, I'll select this one. Once everyone is ready, you reveal, and if it has that icon, you'll be placing hope. If it had this icon, you'll be placing the black cubes of despair. Then you'll take the 2 cards that you didn't select, and you'll pass it to the player to your left, and you'll get 2. And you keep doing this because as the rounds go on, you'll be getting more and more cards like that. So when you get down to 2 cards, you can either pick one and discard one face down to the pile, or you can discard both of them and draw a random one off the top. Let's say we did that and we got this. Well, people will start saying, hey, you must be bad. You're playing a card with despair on. You can say, well, I got it randomly off the top. And so there's a lot of intrigue going on. But again, you're trying to match the icons that are on your character card, which is, of course, is always secret. And you're trying to collect complete sets of 3 cards of the same color. Now, each round, one player will be the constable, and they get this token here as well to show that they've been the constable in the game. Now, the 2 cards start here, cleansing and trial. So what happens is only this player can spend cubes, and what they spend is hope. So anybody can offer to give the constable hope, and the constable can spend a certain amount of hope to enact an event. For example, they could spend 5 white hope cubes to remove 2 despair from anywhere in the community. And again, that's important because, depending on the amount of players, if there's a certain amount of despair, only the witches could win. So the good guys are trying to get rid of the despair. Or you could put somebody on trial. Now, you'll give this card to them, and you're basically trying to do this. If you're a good Puritan, you're trying to place a witch on trial, and if you're a witch, you're trying to cast enough doubt to put a Puritan on trial, because at the end of the game, if you successfully put a witch on trial, you'll be able to remove 2 despair from the city, but if you've wrongly done it, you'll end up adding 2 despair to the city. So the trials can be big things. So once everyone's drafted those cards, a new event is going to come out. Like this one says, pleading. For 2 hope, the constable can spend 2 hope and show their character card secretly to another player, but they remain constable they remain the constable. And then this would get sort of discarded. Now these red ones here are special ones. Those are the ones that start the game. There's plenty of events, and there's a lot of them that get added depending on the amount of players. Now if one of the non-red events gets done, it does go to that bottom pile, but a new one will come out. Now, however, at that point, the constable will change if they've enacted an event. Now, they're not forced to unless they have as many white hope cubes as the most expensive one, and then they have to enact one of the events that's out there. So you can't just sit there and do nothing all the time if they have enough hope cubes to do something. But if they decide not to, they can stay the constable, but if they enact the event, a new player will be a constable. Now, when they figure out who they want to be the constable, there's a lot of talking involved. They'll give this to them, and that player will also get one of these badges because you cannot give this to somebody who already has been the constable, meaning it makes you spread it around a little bit. Also, you can never give the constable to someone who's actually on trial. Now, that new constable can either enact an event following that procedure or end the round. And once the round ends, you go to the next one, and as you can see, round 2, you'll draw 4 and end up playing 3, draw 5, end up playing 4, and then it goes back down, draw 4, play 3, and then in the last round, you will draw 3, play 2, and of course, then you'll get to the end game. And I've kind of already gone over the scoring. At the end, you'll resolve any of the trials, adding or subtracting despair, depending if you rightly or wrongly accuse people. And then you'll look at how many despairs in the entire community of all players, depending on the amount of players. If it has as much as that, only the witches can win. If it doesn't, then only the Puritans can win. And to see who wins, you're adding up points by icons and full sets. All right, first of all, I love the theme here. Again, as I mentioned in the intro, I grew up really close to Salem, Massachusetts. Used to go there, learned all the history, went through a lot of the witch history museums and such. Being there on Halloween is just really cool. But I like the theme of this. This is a quick social deduction game. I mean, it's like 30 minutes, but it has tons of tension. A lot of that because the witches don't know who the witches are as well, and so that leads to a lot of interesting interactions between players. Now, the game pretty much has simple rules. It's easy to teach. You're simply just drafting cards and trying to create sets. But the intrigue is interesting, dropping those different despair or hope cubes. Now, in this one, the second edition, the big change here is the constable expansion. And in the original, anybody could spend cubes, hope cubes, and do an event. And it was just like willy-nilly, free willy. And so it caused some weird things of the timing where it was almost like a real-time game in that sense. Here, only the player with the constable can choose to enact the event. And I think that really fixes that problem. And it's so interesting because you don't know whether to trust that constable or not. They're the only one that can enact the event. And they don't have to. They can keep the constable for a later round, but if they have as many hope cubes as the maximum event there, they have to spend some cubes, and that's cool too. It kind of gets them off there. And then they have to give that constable to someone that hasn't already had it yet, and that's interesting as well. There's lots of interesting choices here that really fix the original, and it makes this game so much better than it used to be. And I loved it before, and I love it even more now. Now, you want to be available to win, because only one of the sides is going to win, which makes you work towards something, but gathering points often goes against that, because you're doing certain things that's going to help your team win, but it might not help you win. And if you do things that just help you win, then probably your team's not even going to be eligible. So those things are at odds with each other, and it works really well. The game scales really well. Even at 3, I've played this game with 3 players, and it still works, especially because in those games, there might not even be a witch. And to know that, and to really, hey, we all good, like just the uncertainty there makes this game work so well. And it even works well with the higher player counts because drafting games still just move fast. Now, the amount of cards per round creates, a nice arc. So there's, you start with just a little bit of cards per round, then it ramps up, and then it ramps back down, and it kind of gives the game an interesting arc. This is one of the best social deduction games I have in my collection. It's so versatile. It plays small groups, large groups. It doesn't take long. It's got interesting mechanisms, not just he said, she said. There's actually drafting involved. This game is fantastic. On the negative side, I would have loved to have seen little player aids. Maybe they wouldn't have been too little, but ones that had the details of all the events, because you can see the event titles from far away, but and after a while you get to know what they all are. But it'd be nice to have a little player aid where you look at the title and then you look on your little thing, you can see what they all sort of do, because a lot of times you don't want to know what you're looking to do, what you're trying to think about, because you're trying to hide who you are. And so that would have been good to have all the event details on a player aid. Also, setup takes a bit for gathering all the right cards, although you can sort them out in the box quite easily. But it does take a little bit to make sure you have all the right cards there. And also, one last note, the drafting can also be done in alternate ways if you're an advanced player, and that's kind of cool too. The game is awesome. I highly recommend this. It's going to get a Saxophone Serenade. It's definitely kicking out the first edition, keeping the second edition for sure. And if you like social deduction games, you might want to check out my reviews on Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, which is also one of my favorites that Also works with smaller player counts, as well as 1 Week Ultimate Werewolf, which also works with 3 players. So those are 2 games that work with smaller player counts in the social deduction area that you might want to check out. And my reviews, the links to those are below me if you want to check those out. So without further ado, let's induct it with a saxophone serenade. Did you miss the Game Topper 2.0 Kickstarter? Have no fear, it's not too late to get in on the ultimate gaming accessory. Convert your table into a high-quality gaming table with a fully portable Game Topper system and take advantage of some of the best 3mm premium gaming mats in the industry. New styles, new sizes, and new accessories can be yours. Upgrade every game you play by late backing now at GameToppersLLC.com.